Hi there. If you have a DSLR or a mirrorless camera and you're looking to upgrade your setup to an intermediate setup like this one behind me, then this video is for you. Today I'm going to talk about the equipment I would buy in 2026 and the order in which I would buy it. My name is Tyler and this is Okie Astro. Let's get into the video. If you're starting from a DSLR or a mirrorless camera on a tripod, then the first piece of equipment that you're going to need to buy is a tracking mount. Unfortunately, we can't just point our cameras up at the night sky and expose for as long as we want to without a tracking mount. The Earth rotates, and because of this, the stars will appear to move in the sky. In order to counteract this rotation, astrophotographers use devices called mounts. Your choice of mount will have a massive impact on the quality of your photos. Generally, mounts can be classified into one of two categories: go-to mounts and non-go-to mounts. A non-go-to mount will only cancel out the rotation of the Earth, while a go-to mount is a more complex system that allows users to input a set of stellar coordinates and have the mount point directly to that object. Each mount will have an advertised maximum weight capacity, and it used to be that you wanted to stay under about 50% of this weight capacity to avoid issues in your image. However, due to the modern technology, you can stay closer to about 80% of this listed advertised maximum weight without any issues at all. I recommend spending as much as you possibly can on your mount, as this piece of equipment is going to be central to your imaging rig. Don't be afraid to purchase a mount with a higher payload capacity than the gear that you currently have, as this will give you headroom to upgrade gear later on without needing to buy a new mount. If you're looking for an ultra-portable mount, you can't go wrong with the Skywatcher Star Adventure 2i Pro. This is a battery-powered, lightweight star tracker. Now, this piece of equipment doesn't have a connection for guiding, so you're going to be limited to exposures under about 30 seconds with a lightweight telescope and a DSLR or dedicated astrophotography camera. While this is the most basic mount we will discuss today, you can still get great images from it, though be aware you cannot guide with this mount, meaning exposure times will be limited to around 30 seconds. If this is the most your budget will allow, you'll still see a huge improvement with this mount over untracked photos. However, if you can spend a bit more upfront, you'll be rewarded with a more capable system in the long run. If you can afford something more substantial, look for a used iOptron Sim26 for around $700. You wouldn't want to lug this around in your backpack, but it has a significantly higher payload capacity of 26 pounds and is a full go-to mount. You can expect to get up to 3-minute sub-exposures without star trailing unguided with this excellent mount, meaning you can save a few dollars up front by skipping out on a guiding camera and control system like a laptop or an ASI Air. This mount can only support Vixen-style dovetail plates out of the box, but if you purchase one of the small refractors I mentioned later in this video, you should have absolutely no issues. The hand controller means that this mount can still be used with only a DSLR and a camera lens, or if you choose to upgrade to a telescope at some point in the near future. This is the second mount I purchased in my astrophotography journey, and I would definitely recommend it for anybody looking to take a step up from a simple star tracker. The newest entries into the astrophotography mount space are called harmonic strain wave gear mounts. These mounts use different technology than traditional equatorial mounts, which allows them to operate without being perfectly balanced, and in many cases, without any counterweights at all. If you're looking for the easiest to use mount with the least setup necessary, look into getting one of these. While many of the popular mount brands have their own harmonic drive mount options, the most popular options remain the ZWO AM5 and its smaller cousin, the ZWO AM3. My personal recommendation, though, would be one of the Ragdoll or Yumi models from Proxisky. Proxisky is a new harmonic mount manufacturer, and their customer service is unrivaled, often responding to inquiries within hours. My Yumi 17R here uses servo motors on the right ascension axis, a feature which is typically reserved for much more expensive mounts. Its payload capacity without a counterweight is 26 pounds, and with a counterweight it can go all the way up to 44 pounds. This is incredibly impressive as the main body of the mount only weighs 8 pounds. At a price point of only $1,700 new, this thing was an absolute steal. Compare that to the ZWO AM5, which is $2,300 new and does not have the advanced servo motors on the right ascension axis. However, the payload capacity and the main body weight are essentially the same between these two mounts. If I had to purchase one mount for the rest of my astrophotography journey, it would be a harmonic mount from Proxisky. Okay, now you have your mount and you're ready to take longer, tracked sub-exposures of the night sky. But you might still be using a camera lens and you start noticing these pesky comas around the stars, these purple and green fringes that look really unpleasant. The next upgrade I would recommend is a telescope. Now, a lot of beginners think they need the largest telescope possible to capture great images. However, that's not true. If you're just starting out, I would recommend to go for a smaller focal length apochromatic refracting telescope. Those are some big words, so let's break down what they mean. A refracting telescope uses lenses to gather and focus light instead of mirrors, like a Newtonian or a Dobsonian telescope. This makes them smaller, more compact, and lighter weight, and more akin to a camera lens that you might be used to. Apochromatic lenses are designed to reduce color fringing or aberrations by bringing different wavelengths of light into focus at a single point. This results in sharper images with minimal color fringing. The three main specifications you want to look at when purchasing a new telescope are focal length, focal ratio, and aperture. These three specifications are closely related. The focal length, which is the same term used for normal photography, defines the amount of zoom that a lens has. The aperture describes how wide in diameter the lens is. Why did I say diameter so weird? And the focal ratio is a relationship between the aperture and the focal distance. For a beginner, I would recommend sticking with a telescope under 300 millimeters of focal length. This will make finding objects in the night sky a lot easier if you decide not to go with a go-to mount. Additional magnification comes at the cost of ease of use, and can make tracking errors in less expensive non-go-to mounts more pronounced, and can make finding objects in the night sky a lot harder. At focal lengths under 300 millimeters, most telescopes will have an aperture of 50 or 60 millimeters. Focal ratio is a critical consideration as this specification tells you how fast a telescope is at collecting light. Lower numbers are better here. This indicates a larger aperture compared to the focal length. A common rule of thumb is that telescopes under f4 are considered fast, and scopes over f10 are considered slow. Many entry-level refractors lay somewhere between f6 and f4, and this is plenty fast. This allows you to see stars on the back of your camera's screen if you're still using a DSLR, and can help you capture light on distant objects faster than telescopes with a slower focal ratio. My first telescope was the critically acclaimed Redcat 51 version 2. This telescope has a focal length of 250 millimeters, aperture of 51 millimeters, and a focal ratio of f4.9. It has 4 glass elements and is a Petzval design, which removes the need to worry about back focus. Back focus is the exact distance from the back of your telescope to the camera's imaging sensor required to achieve a perfectly sharp and flat field of view. I would strongly recommend a telescope with a Petzval design, so you don't have to worry about back focus. The Redcat 51 has had several updates since its release in 2022, and newer versions of this scope cost about $800 new, but many can be found for as low as $600 used. This telescope has excellent correction and can illuminate a sensor as large as an APS-C size sensor if you're still using a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. For a more attainable option, check out this new telescope making waves in the hobby. The Askar 50P is an incredible value proposition. Costing just $300, you get a 190mm focal length f3.8 Petzval astrograph optimized for wide-field astrophotography. While serious astrophotographers have noted that stars from this telescope appear a bit bloated, and while there are better corrected scopes out there, they usually cost more than double the price. So like many things in life, you get what you pay for. However, this telescope represents incredible value, and it's unbeatable for the price if you're looking for a Petzval astrograph to begin your deep space journey. DSLR cameras are an amazing way to get into the hobby, and they can carry you quite far into your astrophotography journey. However, they have one major flaw: the IR cut filter. DSLR cameras are designed to capture only the light humans can see, which makes sense when you think of normal photography. There's one big problem with this though. A lot of the light from deep space objects is blocked by this filter. Hydrogen alpha, for example, a common wavelength emitted by some of the most beautiful nebulae, sits right on the edge of the visible light spectrum. This means the internal IR cut filter in your DSLR blocks nearly all of these photons from reaching your camera sensor. The solution: modify your camera by removing the filter or purchasing a new camera. If you don't feel like destroying something you just paid for, you can look for cameras designed for astrophotography. When you search astrophotography cameras online, you'll find cooled or deep space cameras and something called planetary cameras. These planetary cameras are usually the same exact sensor as the deep sky counterparts, however they don't have the active cooling system. For planetary imaging, very short exposures are stacked together to form the final image. However, for deep space astrophotography, we use a lot longer sub-exposures, sometimes up to even 10 minutes. In this 10 minutes, a lot of heat noise can accumulate on the sensor, and this results in grainy imaging. And the cooling systems built into cooled astrophotography cameras go a long way into mitigating this issue. Unlike DSLR cameras, astrophotography cameras are headless, meaning they don't have a screen or built-in controls. Because of this, you'll need to control them using an external device like a laptop computer, mini PC, or dedicated control device like the ASI Air. Learning the software to control these cameras can be difficult at first, but it's well worth learning as it opens up a world of automation and advanced camera control. So, what dedicated astrophotography cameras would I recommend? The two most compelling sensors on the market right now for beginners are the IMX533 and the IMX585. While the IMX533 features a 1-inch square sensor with larger 3.76 micrometer pixels optimized for framing symmetric deep sky targets, the IMX585 offers a 16:9 widescreen format with smaller 2.9 micrometer pixels. The IMX533 is widely considered the superior all-arounder for dedicated deep sky imaging due to its better dynamic range and bit depth and slightly larger field of view. The IMX533 also has a higher full well capacity, meaning it's less prone to saturating bright stars during longer exposures. The IMX585, on the other hand, has a 16:9 aspect ratio, which might be more comfortable for people used to desktop monitors, who might not like the 1-inch square sensor of the IMX533. The IMX585 also features a newer Sony Stratus 2 technology, which provides excellent sensitivity, particularly in the near-infrared spectrum. The IMX585 is also generally more affordable, making it a slightly lower entry point when compared to the IMX533 sensor. When purchasing cameras with these sensors inside, make sure you get whatever brand you decide on Pro version of this camera, as the Pro version is usually the version with the built-in cooling system. For example, ZWO sells their color IMX533 sensor and their ZWO ASI 533 MC Pro. Each brand labels their products differently, so before you purchase, make sure you're getting the cooled color version. I want to talk briefly about ecosystems. No, not those ecosystems. These ecosystems. You can think of ZWO as Apple and all of the other brands as Android. This is because ZWO products usually work the best together, however, they usually have a higher upfront cost. And this is important to consider because if you think you're going to want to control your imaging rig with a dedicated device like the ASI Air, then you're going to need all ZWO products, as the ASI Air only works with ZWO products outside of the mount and some select DSLR cameras. If you want to go with cheaper options up front and control your devices with different software, then you can, of course, use a mini PC instead of something like the ZWO ASI Air. Now that we've talked about all the gear and equipment I'm going to recommend in this video, I want to talk shortly about the mindset of astrophotography. The beautiful hobby of astrophotography is one that requires patience and practice. We point our telescopes at objects millions of light years away and take hundreds, if not thousands, of pictures, totaling hours and hours of exposure time. If you expect to buy a lot of equipment and produce an image similar to the Hubble Space Telescope without ever having opened an imaging editing software before or taken a single picture of the night sky, then you're probably going to be a little bit disappointed in the results that you get. And this is totally okay. This is a long-term hobby, and many astrophotographers, including myself, might even only purchase one piece of new equipment a year. So don't be discouraged if you see prices in videos like this one and think that you have to buy everything all at once or your images are going to be terrible. That's just not true, and in fact, a lot of the time, buying more expensive gear if you're not up to the task of handling that gear isn't really going to make your images look any better. The whole process of astrophotography, from capturing the deep space objects to framing the deep space objects to even choosing what to photograph, takes time and experience. And then once you've collected all the data, you still have to edit it, and that's over half of the process in my opinion. Comparing your images with images taken by somebody else who might have decades more experience than you or hundreds of thousands of dollars worth and more gear than you is just a recipe for self-doubt and losing interest in the hobby. And even I struggle with comparison sometimes, but it's important to remember that you should just compare your images to those taken by yourself. Look at your own growth and journey in the hobby, and in this way you'll never be disappointed. Enjoy the process of improvement and enjoy the wonder of God's creation that we have the blessing of being able to see. Never before has astrophotography been so inexpensive for people to get into the hobby, and I know you might be thinking to yourself, you just talked about hundreds of dollars worth of equipment and you're calling it inexpensive. But the data and the pictures that we're able to capture with this equipment have never been better than they are now. So I just want to put that out there as a welcome to all of the new astrophotographers joining the hobby. It's really exciting. The growth in our little niche here is really expanding, and it just makes me so glad that people get to come alongside and see this beautiful night sky, these beautiful objects that have been designed for us to be able to view them and just really be amazed at God's wonder and God's glory. As a believer passionate in sharing God's creation with other people, I plan on including some kind of prayer or blessing at the end of every video of mine. Now, if you think this is weird or you're uncomfortable with it and you don't want it, then feel free to click off the video now and I won't be offended. For those of you who stayed, here's a blessing from number 6. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. Amen. I'm Tyler, and until next time, clear skies.